And you're like, Kat, is that even news? Well, yeah, I think that it is news because it serves as a reminder that, hey, we have a president that is just not, he's not even capable of standing upright. He can't stand upright. So we're going to get to all of that here in the 6 o'clock hour. In the 7 o'clock hour, I have a very special guest, Regan Deering. She's going to be joining me. I saw you all I saw Mary Miller, got to chat with her a little bit. I was emceeing this awesome event at the Hesed House. Shout out to Desi Anderson. She runs a pretty tight ship over there. And it was really cool to listen to these amazing women. They went through this graduate program, and it was just like from January all the way through September, they went through this program, and it's a vigorous program where they learn to become either candidates themselves or learn how to work campaigns. And it's all things politics and conservative politics. And I got to talk with Mary Miller a little bit, got to talk with Regan a little bit. It's a really cool event out there at the Hesed House. But joining me in studio this morning, you know him, you love him. He's very, very, very bright and early this morning. Up bright
and early for me, Kat. I'm surviving though. I got my Red Bull in hand and I'm ready. But...
Yep, I got my cup of coffee. We're gonna run through something before I get to the Green Funeral Home. The 115 bodies found, which is just shocking to me, but it shouldn't shock you because it's a green weenie policies. These things suck.
For anybody out there too, we did. I don't know if we did, but Kev Ferris right here, everybody.
And be sure to subscribe to his YouTube channel. That's Kev Ferris or Speechless with Kev Ferris. So go ahead, check it out. He has a show on Cities 92.9. You can hear it over the radio or via our app. That's called Speechless, and that's from 3 to 5 live. But Kev, you showed me this morning. You said, "Are you talking about this in your show?" And honestly, I didn't see this. Vivek Ramaswamy. And I've always said that I don't trust him so much. I don't know what it is. It's just, I just don't trust that he is truly authentic. And, full disclosure, I won't vote for somebody who's not a Christian. That's how I base my vote a lot of the time is, hey, are they going to be a Christian leader? Because first and foremost, right, I'm a Christian, then I'm conservative. If you aren't even a Christian, then although he talks about God and he talks about the importance of Judeo-Christian values, he's not a Christian himself. He's actually, I believe, Hindu.
Yep.
But I'm just going to read his tweet for you guys this morning, and then I want to get Kevin's reaction and what you've seen about it. So here's his tweet. The Harvard student groups who co-signed the anti-Israel letter are simple fools. Background, Kev, can you fill us in with what the Harvard
so
students
this was like entirely what my show was about yesterday. That's why I'm really passionate about what he has to say. Earlier last week, more than 30 Harvard student organizations signed an open letter, saying that they were holding Israel entirely responsible for the violence in the Middle East, saying that Hamas was totally justified. Palestine is totally justified. It is all Israel's fault. That is what all these Harvard student groups said. One of which, interestingly, was actually a Jews for Liberation, which is an anti-Zionist Jewish organization. So basically, once again, chickens for KFC kind of thing. Then with all of that, you had CEOs that came out because you have all these privileged Harvard students who believe that their crap doesn't stink and that they're better than everybody else because they're Harvard students. They're Ivy League and everything. Well, once their Harvard privilege was being checked, what do I mean by that? Well, you had CEOs, particularly one, Bill Ackman, who's a hedge fund manager and Harvard alum, that posted on Twitter right after all of this saying, I want the receipts. I want the names of the students who signed on to this. I want to make sure I don't hire a single one of them. Several other CEOs, including Sweet Green CEO Jonathan Neiman, Jake Wurzak, who's the CEO of Dove Hill, FabFitFun CEO Michael Brockman, and more, said that they were with this. They wanted the names. They wanted the receipts. They do not want to hire these people because they are actively supporting and sympathizing with terrorists.
Well,
And
right, and this is a letter, so they are signing this Israel letter,
mhm,
so they are it's like social media,
yep.
right? It's fair game, and I think that the CEOs, like they have access to your social media, should be able to have access to something
Oh
that
yeah, if you
is
sign
as
on to something
blatant
like
as a
that. Well,
letter.
and here's the thing, and so there's two things that I want to add with that too, and just to break down my entire show as quick as possible. The first is that so I'm a college student myself.
Mhm,
I recognize I'm a relatively controversial figure in some areas. I mean, for the facts that I state biological fact that a man is a man, a woman is a woman. You can't change that, and if you believe you're going to change that, well, then that's a mental illness. And
you
I say things like
extremist.
that, and I understand that there's a lot of these pro LGBTQ plus companies out there, and I probably won't get hired by them because I'm open and honest about what I believe on that. But the thing is I don't want to work for a company
Mhm,
that doesn't just as much as you won't vote for somebody who's not a Christian because that doesn't support your values. I don't want to work for a company that's going to propagate harmful propaganda such as anti science, pseudoscience, really, that a man can become a woman and those things are interchangeable, and all the effects that that has. So no, I
mhm.
don't want to work for a company like that. So if these students really believed that Israel was completely to blame, then you would think that they wouldn't want to work for these CEOs either. But the thing is that you can tell that their woke activism, and this is the second point I wanted to get to, their woke activism is incredibly performative for the most part. Now, not all of them, but several of them are, because since those CEOs came out, many of those student groups started backtracking and
Mhm,
saying, no, 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 that's not what we meant. You
mhm.
misinterpreted, or we didn't even read the statement or anything. Even one of actually one Harvard student who was actually a Harvard law student came out and said, as a board member of a Harvard group that signed a statement on Israel, I think it was egregious and have resigned from my role. I am sorry for the pain this caused. My organization did not have a formal process, and I didn't even see the statement until we signed on, meaning that this girl was on the board for an organization
That
that
signed
signed
on.
on to this, and she didn't even read it. And she's a Harvard law student. I'm sorry, but I would not want any lawyer that would not read through my case file before entering the courtroom. So I wouldn't want this girl as my lawyer. And the fact that she's at Harvard, one of the most prestigious schools, either says a lot about her or a lot about Harvard.
Well, also, what people have to recognize is that these organizations that and the boards, the people who signed on to this is all top level stuff. So she
Mm-hmm.
might not have a position on the board that decides that kind of stuff, which I understand, but you should really get to know these organizations that you're a part of.
Oh, yeah.
And we see it all of the time, right? BLM, right? Black Lives Matter. Well, of course they do. I'm going to be a part of that. And then BLM, they put out this image of a paratrooper suggesting that they're for the paratroopers who flew down,
Parachuted down and then
parachuted down, and
proceeded to
slaughtered.
cause the pretty much the most egregious attack on Jewish people since the Holocaust.
Yeah. And they promoted that.
Mm-hmm.
And
And not
like,
only promote it, they're in full support of it. And this is BLM Chicago.
yeah.
Look, what the thing about all of these college students is they are so jaded by the indoctrination that they've received in their education system that says we need to hate America, we need to hate Judeo-Christian values, we need to hate everything associated with that, that
Hmm.
they will actively support terrorists,
Hmm.
genuine terrorists. I don't care what side of the culture wars you're on. I don't care what you believe the best government style is. You are evil if you genuinely believe that chopping off the heads of babies and advocating for the genocide of an entire people is okay.
Yeah.
Because that's what Hamas has done, and that's what they will continue to do.
Yeah.
Because that is their goal in their charter.
Because, despite all of the rhetoric, the colonialism, everybody says colonialism,
Mm-hmm.
colonialism, colonialism. Despite all of that rhetoric, they're actually the ones who are the colonial, like the colonialists, right?
Mm,
They're the ones who are coming in, stealing the
the
land.
colonizers.
You
Yep.
and I talked about that over the weekend. Was, hey, if you look at the numbers, Israel is an itty bitty bitty country,
Mm-hmm.
and you've got all of these Arabs and Muslims, 300 million of them compared to their 8 million people, and they're coming in via tunnels, like digging underground to get into Jerusalem, to get into Israel, and just wipe out and steal their teenage Israelis.
Yep.
They're just taking them and beheading them.
Yeah, I even saw an article the other day where a grieving father was happy to know that his young daughter. I think it was like between like 9 and 11, like very young preteen, very young daughter. He was happy to hear, or at least found solace in the fact that he found out that his daughter was murdered and not kidnapped, because he knew that whatever would happen to her in a kidnapping, if she was taken back to Gaza, would be worse than if she had been murdered on the spot.
Yeah. Well, let's get back to Vivek Ramaswamy's message here. Yeah. So now you guys have some background. There's this anti-Israel letter. Some Harvard students.
Over 30 student groups, including Amnesty International, too, which is like supposed to be a peace organization, which is funny, but I digress.
They wrote and signed on to this anti-Israel letter. And then Vivek Ramaswamy goes on in his tweet here, but it's not productive for companies to blacklist kids for being members of student groups that made dumb political statements on campus. Colleges are spaces for students to experiment with ideas, and sometimes kids join clubs that endorse boneheadedly wrong ideas. I've been as vocal as anyone in criticizing left-wing cancel culture, but it's bad no matter who practiced it. It wasn't great when people wearing Trump hats were fired from work. It wasn't great when college graduates couldn't get hired unless they signed oppressive DEI pledges. And it's not great now if companies refuse to hire kids who are part of these student groups that once adopted the wrong view on Israel. This isn't a legal point; it's a cultural point. I say this as someone who vehemently disagrees with those Harvard student groups. Those calling for blacklisting the students right now are responding from a place of understandable hurt, but I'm confident that in the fullness of time, they will agree with me on the wisdom of avoiding these cancel culture tactics. So he's talking about it, and he's saying, hey, these anti-Israel student groups, they boneheadedly had the wrong ideas, but we shouldn't cancel them. Vivek, I'm just gonna say it, pal. Trump people who wear Trump hats, they are not the same as these people who are backing actual terrorists who are committing war crimes and who are beheading children. Okay, people who were there is something. Sometimes you have to stop an idea because it's the truth, and you have to stop these bad ideas because it's not because they're bad ideas. It's because it's not the truth.
Yeah.
Objectively speaking, it's not the truth that Hamas. Palestine isn't even a country. Palestinian in Hebrew actually means invader. And, there's a difference between saying, hey, like we agree that men are men, women are women. That's a biological fact. Yep. And anything outside of that is just lunacy. The fact is, Hamas is brutalizing the Israelis, and they have been for years, since 1948, since they became a country. And yeah, that's disappointing to hear that from Vivek.
Well, there's a lot to kind of look at with this too. And so like the first thing that I want to point out in this statement is it says colleges are spaces for students to experiment with ideas, and some kids join clubs that endorse boneheadedly wrong ideas. And so look, when it comes to these CEOs, the way I'd look at it is you definitely want to find out who these board members, like who the people that are at the top of the clubs, who are the ones that made the decision to sign on. Yeah, sure. Maybe some kid that sits in the back of the club and just goes to listen. Sure, maybe their name doesn't need to be included. But from what it sounds like is these CEOs want to know who was responsible for signing on to these letters, which makes sense. And once again, look, these students should have to. What are we going to do here? Because are we going to start saying that being 18, 19, 20, 21 is too young to be able to make an informed decision? Because if we're going to start doing that, then we're going to start leading ourselves into a place where we're going to say, well, that means that you can get shipped off to war at 18, but you can't own a gun until you're 25. That's the road that we're heading down. If you're going to, because the way that it sounds is that he's saying it's just some kids, it's dumb kids. Go experiment with ideas. That's another thing he says. Colleges are space for students to experiment with ideas. Experimenting with ideas is, okay, maybe doing the critical thought and saying, what if Hamas is in the right? Asking that question. Sure, you can ask that question and have a conversation about it. That's what free speech is all about. And yeah, you can even come to the wrong conclusion that Hamas is right. That's a wrong conclusion. You can come to that, but you should also have to have some kind of retribution for that, for taking that stance.
And exactly.
Cancel culture is when you dox somebody, when you put somebody's address out there, when you call for death threats or any kind of threat to somebody.
Or fire
cancel
somebody.
Culture, well, to
this
an extent,
is different from firing somebody.
This is
hey,
just
I don't want you to be a part of my company.
Exactly.
And the CEO should also have their rights intact to do that as companies.
And once again, would you want to work for a company or organization that is against the belief that you are willing to sign on for?
No, I've always said it. If I was running a company today, I would, have on there, and I know you can't discriminate based on political affiliation.
You actually can.
I would say, hey,
it's not a protected class. You actually can.
Yeah, I would want to put it on my application. Are you conservative or liberal? And I'd put the boxes on there. I'd be like, please check one.
Yep.
All right, I do have to take a quick break, but Kev Ferris joining me on the other side. We're going to continue probably this conversation a little bit more. And then I do want to get into my first story for today. 115 bodies found at this green funeral home. At this point, I think we've had enough evidence that anything labeled as a green alternative likely does more damage than its commonly used counterparts. Okay, just regular funeral homes. What was so bad about them? Like, I think they were functioning just fine. You didn't have to go and greenify it up and screw it up. I'll be back. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. That's Kat Peterson 929 on YouTube. You can find us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Rumble. Kev Ferris joining me. Find him on YouTube. That's Speechless with Kev Ferris. We'll be back. Good morning, friends. Thanks for joining the stream. I so do appreciate it. If you guys could smash the like button, that'd be great. We are going to be getting into that first story. Also, another story. Hamas caucus member ILHAN Omar. She's been busted for.
Did you say Hamas caucus member?
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, that's an actual caucus.
Is it really? In Congress, there's a Hamas caucus?
I mean, I think that the people on the right have been calling them that.
Okay.
But yes, the people like AOC, ILHAN Omar,
your
Rashida
members,
Tlaib.
basically.
Yeah. So ILHAN Omar, she actually tweeted out an image, and it was actually kind of funny because this image is kind of, it's misinformation. It's anti-Israel misinformation. So the image is actually from 2013. She tweeted it out, and it's of children, and it's a terrifying image. It's so sad. It's just children's dead bodies lined up. Now, here's the thing, though. These were not Palestinian children. So ILHAN Omar didn't take AOC's advice. AOC, she got out on X and she warned people. She said, hey, if you see a claim, a photo, or a video that triggers a strong emotional reaction, take a moment and pause and check the truth from multiple sources. Get the truth.
Yep.
Which was like, okay, yeah, sure, AOC. But ILHAN Omar didn't take AOC's advice, okay? Because ILHAN, she posts this and she says, this is child genocide in Palestine where 614 Palestinian children were murdered by Israeli forces. That's false. She shared the image and it was from 2013. And it was from Syria. And this was after some alleged Assad attacks on civilians. So these were not Palestinians. These were not Israelis. This was Assad. And it was Assad, and they had this Eastern Ghouta gas attack. Okay, so they gassed out a bunch of children. So nothing to do with Israel, Palestine, absolutely nothing. She reposted the image, and she said it was from Gaza, where they gassed 614 Palestinian children. That's false. The image is from 2013, and it was child victims of the Assad regime, and they did this gas attack back in 2013.
Yep.
So totally false. And this is a sitting congresswoman, ILHAN Omar, a sitting congresswoman and she's spreading that kind of misinformation. This is an image from 2013. She says it's Palestinian children. It's not. And, I just love it because is AOC going to call out this is disinformation and
Oh God,
misinformation?
no.
Because I know that AOC, being that she loves the Hamas terrorists, the reason why she tweeted that out was because, the babies, the beheadings, which we later found out is actually true. I know there was some,
some questions, and the problem is that because of, I think it was the UK was going to sanction X, Twitter, if they didn't remove, based on like the UK's content policy guidelines, if they didn't remove a significant number of the videos and pictures and everything that had shown the attacks, they were going to like basically get rid of Twitter in the UK. And so Elon Musk was basically forced to take a lot of it down and take a lot of it off, which is crazy to me because there's still a significant number of illegal content like child pornography that circulates on Twitter. And yet it's not as easy to get that off.
Yeah.
What's going on there? How are you able to get all the pictures and videos of the Hamas stuff off there real quick, but you can still have child pornography on Twitter? Just saying.
Yeah. Yeah. That new Twitter CEO. I
go back and forth with him. I go back and forth because he's better than Jack Dorsey, 100%.
Yeah.
But
the Twitter CEO is now, what's her name? Linda.
Oh, yeah, you have that one.
Linda Yacino. And she is rabid. She is a rabid leftist, and I don't think that we're going to get as much freedom from Twitter.
Yeah, Elon is still the owner though, and I go back and forth with him, but he's better than Twitter is still a better space.
It's kind of like Vivek. I don't trust him.
Yeah, kind of. This thing, because I was very favorable. I was a lot more trusting of Vivek before you were. Maybe that's because he just bought me drinks in Florida, but I was, and then I see that.
Well, I've shared with you. I don't know. I just don't trust Vivek.
Yeah,
I don't know if it's anybody who professes that and they're not actually the religion that they profess. It's so odd to me. Like, I wouldn't go out there and be like, he is just like so he advocates for Judeo-Christian values, and he talks about God as if he's a Christian. And then I'm thinking to myself,
well, you want to know why? It's politics, though, because he knows that a significant number of the Republican base, if not ardently Christian in some way, like evangelical Catholic or something like that, are at least Christian sentiment based. And so running as a Hindu on the Republican ticket, and if you were to come out and be like and start quoting Hindu scripture, one, it wouldn't be relatable, but it would also just be like you'd have all these Christian, if not just like Christian related people that would just wouldn't listen to him right after.
Yeah, I don't know. Anybody who does that though, like, and he's lying. Right. And like how much
what's new in politics, Kat?
Yeah, but how much do you actually profess to be Hindu if you're like, he's committing blasphemy against his own religion. I don't know how they practice Hinduism.
Yeah, I don't know, because I know that like obviously in Christianity it's like you have to spread the word of God. I would assume that would be similar in Hindu, but in Hinduism, but I don't know.
We're back here in just a couple of seconds. Go ahead and smash the like button. Coming up in just a little bit, I'll be talking about the Hamas caucus member. Yes, I don't know if it's like legit a Hamas caucus.
I looked it up. I don't see an actual Hamas caucus. I think it's a talking point or a term that's used to kind of disparage, kind of a pejorative for those that are being very, very sympathetic to terrorists. But
yes. And you should really be on the lookout for people who, and this is how they'll say, it's just a tragedy all the way around. It's just a tragedy for the Palestinians, for the Jewish people. No, we've debunked this. If you haven't seen the Conservative Cat Show, Kev Ferris and myself over the weekend, we did an entire show about Israel, and we went through some of the myths surrounding Israel and Palestine. And Palestine isn't even a country.
Nope.
Like, I don't even understand how they have a flag.
Well, the gays do too, and they're not a country. So.
Yeah, well, it's kind of funny when you see these protests, videos of these protests. I've never really seen one in in person, like a Palestinian flag. I've never really seen that. Now, I have gone to protests and I've seen gay pride flags, BLM flags, Antifa flags. In fact, I've even gone to a protest and I've seen the CCP flag
Yep.
flying, which I was like, what? But I've never seen the Palestinian flag. But a lot of times when you see these protests, you'll see the Palestinian flag flying amidst, the LGBTQ flag, the BLM flag. I find that funny because, you've got the LGBTQ flag and the Palestinian flag flying right next to each other in
Yep.
Palestine.
That's where she had to leave for you, right outside her office.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and in these Palestinian territories, like I
Mhm.
said, not a country. And if you were to visit these Palestinian territories, it's like San Francisco. If you were like, it's third world. And really, what it is, I think this war is just envy and jealousy. They look at what the Israelis have, they look at how God has blessed them. They look at this
And
and
just
they're
hatred,
angry.
pure hatred.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the other thing.
Well, and that's one thing Americans can't grasp. We even leftists, right?
Mhm.
Leftist Democrats for what they are, they still like have dogs and families
Yep.
and they still celebrate each other's birthdays and marriage.
Yep.
They still celebrate these things in American culture. And that's what makes America so great is because we celebrate life and we chose God.
Mhm.
There might be atheists, but as a country as a whole, endowed by a creator, these unalienable rights.
Yep.
Like our founders chose God. And because of that, you are so blessed as an American. You get to celebrate life. God is all about life. He actually created life, right?
Yep.
In the beginning. And what these people in these Hamas terrorists, what they don't understand is that life is awesome. They celebrate death in the same way you celebrate life.
Yep.
They don't have pets, they don't celebrate babies, they don't celebrate birthdays. That's not what they do over there. They celebrate death. They think that, hey, if I die in my radical religion, then that is achieving the best. Like that is winning at life, as if
Mhm.
I die for a cause. These people are not and I don't think that we actually grasp that as Americans. But that show is archived for you on YouTube. You guys can check that out. And we just kind of busted all of those myths. But this Hamas caucus member,
Yep.
ILHAN Omar, she got busted for spreading this anti-Israel misinformation. So I'm kind of excited to talk about that, despite AOC's warning. Also, did you see AOC farted?
I did see the AOC fart video.
Yeah, she has yet to come out.
I want my I hope that it's real, but there is a part of me that says it very well could be an edited video.
Well, and
And
she's
that's
in this.
probably what she'll say. And if that's what she says, then I know that it's real.
Oh, I don't think it's edited. And even if she comes out and she said, yeah, then you'd know it's real. But
Mhm.
I don't know if it was a fart or she was moving around in her
In her
leather
seat,
chair.
maybe.
If she moved like a little bit in her leather chair, that leather rubbing up against her pants might have
Yeah,
created
true.
enough friction.
True. I can't believe we're trying to defend AOC right now with the fart video. You got us, AOC. This was her plan all along.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. But we'll get to that here coming up in just a little bit. I do want to talk about the 115 bodies found at this Colorado Green funeral home. The police investigated this very putrid smell. And like I said, folks, at this point, I think we have enough evidence to that anything labeled as green is just going to do more damage than it does good. It's just a fact. So here we go. The story. More than 100 bodies were found at this green funeral home in Penrose. This is a small little community, and the neighbors reported this putrid smell, kind of like a dead animal smell. Blech. Um, a neglected building in a small Colorado town, Penrose, had an awful smell for several days, and it led the police to take a closer look at the Green Funeral Storage Facility. It's a green funeral home after neighbors reported a smell. So 115 decaying bodies, improperly stored. These trash bags they had this odor, and it was just everywhere. And then they got there, the police got there, and it's called Return to Nature Funeral Home. These green burials, they don't do any embalming, they don't do metal caskets. And it's all legal. You can do a green burial. But there's a way to do it, and I don't think these people were doing it correctly, but it was a gruesome discovery. And this woman, this poor little old lady, she like lives like it's kind of hilly in Colorado. It's like a lot of mountains. So she like overlooks the funeral home. It's like right below her balcony, and it's like wafting up to her
Oh,
balcony. And she goes, I just assumed it was a dead animal, not a bunch of dead people.
yeah.
So there was no embalming fluids, no concrete vaults, as natural as possible. That's what their website says. They advertise that. So these green burials, like I said, are legal in the state, but anybody not buried within 24 hours must be properly refrigerated, and that's what was not happening.
hmm
So according to the Associated Press, a state document alleged that the funeral home owner tried to conceal the improper storage of the corpses. So he also alleges that he was doing taxidermy with these bodies. I don't know if that's even legal. Or, I don't know.
Some Jeffrey Dahmer stuff right there, I'll
That's
tell you.
weird. And it's like so creepy and disturbing. The sheriff, he did a news conference there. He said that the scene was absolutely horrific. And it shouldn't surprise us, right? That leftists, these progressives, these green weenies, they don't
Green
care.
weenies.
Yeah, they don't care about life.
Well, and this is something I've said for a long time, Kat, is I believe that a lot of leftist ideology, because the majority of it abandons God in some way, or if not actively encourages people to abandon God. So what they do is they seek religion in other things and in worldly things. And so I believe that one of the biggest religions the left has created is the green movement. It's the religion of green. And what do I mean by that? Well, if you think about it, they have their Bible, which essentially is these quote unquote studies and everything that show that the world's going to end in 12 years. It's a doomsday cult.
Mhm.
That's essentially what it is. And so what do you have to do? Okay, well, you have to get this kind of car. These are their commandments. You get this kind of car. You have to start your compost pile. You have to have your bodies without any of these fluids and everything that
Yeah, so
just
what
decaying.
what
You have
is
to
that about
continue doing
these
all of that. And then if you sin, your sins being using a plastic straw or not recycling, well, then you have to apologize to Mother Earth and you have to plant a tree. And that's how you repent for your sins. They treat this like a religion because they have no God.
Mm,
And so they treat the earth, while earth is God made and should be respected, loved, and cared about.
because we're stewards of it, right?
Exactly. But instead of they take their studies without necessarily peer review or looking at alternative ideas and ideologies and other studies. They take that, what they see as fact, they live in their doomsday cult, and they treat it like a religion. It
Yeah.
is their religion.
And, I love how you bring that up. All of these green alternatives, why does it always end with them just smelling bad, right? Less showers, no deodorant. I'm sure you see a few of those people on
Oh,
campus.
I smell them. I smell them before I see them, Kat. So
Before I see them. All right. Well, we have to take a quick break, but I think we know we know what progressive lawmakers mean when they talk about Green New Deal policies. And I love it. Mary Miller yesterday, she says they're not Green New Deal policies, they're Green Bad Deal
yep.
policies. And Mary Miller yesterday at the Hesed House, she got up on the microphone and she said, these green bad deals. And I was thinking about that. So I was like, yeah, this green stuff is a total scam.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to be back on the other side. This is the Morning Buzz. ILHAN Omar. She is a American congresswoman, alleged American congresswoman. I don't even know if she's from America. People from America don't act like this. She's in the Hamas caucus. We're going to label that as the Hamas caucus. And she's spreading misinformation on X. Where is AOC? Where is the outrage? Come on, AOC. Get on it. I'll be back. Good morning. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in, folks. I so do appreciate it. Kev's getting out of here. Wish him luck on his LSAT. Throw it into the comments section. Show him some love. He's got an LSAT here at 7 a.m. So we are going to be talking a little bit about the Mantino battery plant that is, in fact, CCP. It is not CCP backed. It is the CCP because if you look at their bylaws, it actually says in their bylaws that the purpose of our company is to further the party. And by party, they mean the Chinese Communist Party. So, by definition and via their own bylaws, they are the Chinese Communist Party. This isn't a company backed by the CCP. This is a company that serves the CCP and exists because of the CCP. So we are going to be getting to that. I think it's interesting. There was a new poll that came out and it talks about how these Michigan voters overwhelmingly opposed this Chinese battery factory, and this Michigan battery factory is nearly identical to the one that's coming to Illinois, Manteno, Illinois. It's a small little town. So the voters in Michigan overwhelmingly uh, opposed the state contributing taxpayer funds to this battery plant in Michigan being built by American companies in partnership with companies affiliated with the CCP. So this is happening in Michigan. We've got American companies that are partnering with CCP companies to build this Chinese Communist electric vehicle battery plant. It's called Goshen is the name of the company, and it's planned for Michigan. It's also planned for Manteno. Here's the numbers, staggering. 72% of people say no, we do not want the plant. 11% of Michigan voters said that they are for tax dollars going to projects like these. So, um, this is an interesting poll, and I would be curious if we could poll the state of Illinois, residents from Illinois, what they think about the Goshen plant. And I think that it would mirror this poll. 72% of people saying no, we don't want the Goshen plant, we don't want the CCP coming in. If you guys are watching right now, go ahead and smash the like button. Uh, Really quick, we're going to be back, and I will be visiting with Regan Deering. Oh, hey, good morning. Thanks so much for joining me. This just in, Illinois State Police urging vigilance, awareness against violence and hate crimes in wake of the Middle East conflict. So yes, this was a press release released by the Illinois State Police. And they are warning, hey, there could be an increase in violent activity. There could be some hate crimes as Israeli Hamas conflict continues. The Illinois State Police continues coordinating statewide law enforcement communications and activity in response to elevated levels of threats of violence and hate crimes related to the current conflict. So the ISP is reminding the public of the importance of remaining vigilant against hate crime activity and potential terrorism. So Quote, this is the ISP director. He says, everyone in Illinois, both law enforcement and community members alike, must remain on guard against both terrorism and hate crimes during this period of uh, uh, validity. Volatility. Volatility. This is a press release. He talks about, Muslim and Jewish communities. So he says that the ISP is outreaching to Muslim and Jewish communities in Illinois to communicate and support religious leaders being impacted by the current threat environment. I'm just gonna say it, if you're Jewish, you got to be on the lookout. This is what's going on in Israel. There's so much misinformation out there. Palestine is not a country. There are things called Palestinian territories, and they are definitely non-functioning like a government. If you go to these Palestinian territories, they suck. There's no vibrancy to these communities. They are much like San Francisco if you were to visit there here in the United States, or one of these liberal hellholes like Chicago. That's what these Palestinian territories are like. And they're jealous that the Israelis have this wonderful country. And this country was, of course, promised to the Israels by God. And Ezekiel, he promised that he was going to gather the Jews and bring them into one place in one country and bless them. After the Roman Empire, of course, destroyed them, wiped them out. 2,000 years later, in 1948, they become a country. And ever since becoming a country in 1948, they've faced all kinds of war. They've faced all kinds of threats from the Arabs and the Muslims that are over there in the Middle East. These radical, and I'm not saying that there's not good Muslims or good Arabs over there, but a majority of the 300 million people over there in these countries, and specifically in these Palestinian territories, want one thing and one thing only: the eradication of Jewish people. So interesting that the ISP released that today. So be vigilant. The ISP is warning you to be vigilant, and there is an increased risk for so-called hate crimes. So before we took the break, I was telling you a little bit about ILHAN Omar and how she was spreading misinformation. So yes, this is interesting because we've got ILHAN Omar out here. She's a member of the HAMAS caucus, that's what I'm calling it, but she's an alleged American congresswoman, and she's the vice chair of the Democrat Hamas caucus, and she was caught spreading misinformation on X, Twitter, as part of her vendetta against Jews. She's an anti-Semite, and Israel, right? She is against Jews, Israel, all despite the warnings of the social media influencer, AOC, former bartender. So AOC gets out there on X and she says, hey, be careful if you see a photo that triggers a strong emotional reaction. Take a moment, pause, check, get some confirmation from multiple sources. This is what AOC says on her Twitter. Representative AOC should have taken a moment to pause after she ripped a fart in a video accusing Israel of ethnic cleansing. So she's accusing Israel of ethnic cleansing. And this is kind of a big deal because it's like been making its rounds and people think that AOC actually farted in this video. Like actually farted. And I don't know. I don't know if it's because she rubbed her chair the wrong way. You'll hear it here towards the end. But let's take a listen to what AOC says here about how Israelis are doing an ethnic cleansing, is what she's calling it, of Arabs, Muslims, Palestinians. Here we go.
United States, our responsibility is to the stability and the security of the region. That means being able to support, yes, Israel in its defensive capacities, right, in its ability in that context, but it also means that the United States has a responsibility to ensure accountability to human rights, to prevent the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians, and to ensure that horrors do not happen in the names of victims who do not want their tragedy
So you heard it there.
Used to justify further violence and injustice.
Right. So there you go. People are saying that that's a fart. She has not come out and discussed whether or not that was a fart. But as I said, Ilhan Omar, she didn't take AOC's advice there from the tweet where she says, "Hey, check it out. Get some get confirmation from several sources before you share something that provokes an emotional response." Ilhan did not take the advice of AOC, and she actually shared this photo out of these children, and it's a really gruesome photo. It's sad, but she said that this was child genocide in Palestine, where 614 Palestinian children were murdered by Israeli forces. That's not true. She missed a lot of details. Number one, the photo that Ilhan Omar shared out was actually not Palestinian children. It was a photo from 2013. It was from Syria. This was after an alleged Assad attack on civilians. More importantly, this had zero to do with Israel or Palestinians. Okay. Zero, none. She reposted an image that she said was from Gaza, but it's actually a 2013 image of child victims of the Assad regime's Eastern Ghouta gas attack. So they gassed all these children. Gruesome, sad, but this is from 2013. And she shared this out as a sitting congresswoman. I have to take a break, but when we come back, Cities 92.9, I've got so much to get to today. One thing I did want to talk about was Joe Biden falling again, and Regan Deering will be joining me in the 7 o'clock hour. Good morning. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in. I so do appreciate it. Who is on the side of ethnic cleansing, AOC? Israelis have always been in war on defense mode from being wiped away. She's such a hack. Yes. So, I know that you understand what's going on because you're kind of dealt with this in America. So we have people like Chaz, Antifa, BLM. Remember when they created these autonomous zones? That is very similar to what has been going on for decades, years, since 1948. And they've broken away from Israel because they don't want to be a Jewish state. Zionism, all it is that if I am a Christian Zionist, Zionism, all it is that you believe Israel should exist and that they have the right to defend themselves. And here's the thing: if Israel stopped fighting, then they would be wiped out completely. And if the Hamas stopped fighting, Hamas and the terrorist organizations and these Palestinians, if they stopped fighting, then there would be no fighting. Like if they would stop going on the offensive, then we wouldn't be in this situation where the Israelis are constantly defending themselves. They've given up land offers in exchange for peace. They gave up Gaza in 2005, I think it was. There's been several land offers. A lot of the time, what these Hamas terrorist organizations do, they shut down the land offers and they say, no, we don't want the land offer. What do you mean? No, we don't want it. What? It's not about the land. It's not about resources. In typical war, that's what it's usually about, specifically in Russia and Ukraine. Ukraine is very resource rich. But in this case, we have the Hamas terrorist organization. They are trying to eradicate a race and trying to eradicate an ethnicity because they don't like that they exist. They also hate America. Death to America is what they chanted after 9/11. Okay, there's video footage after 9/11. These Palestinians were in the streets shouting, "Death to America, death to America." And uh, the reason why they hate Israel and America, think about it. It doesn't take a rocket scientist, right? The reason why they hate Israel, the Jewish people, and Christians, Judeo Christian values. Okay. They hate those values because they hate God. They hate life. They are about death. And AOC, she's mistaken. There's not an ethnic cleansing going on when it comes to the Palestinians. Clearly not, because I've told you before, look at the numbers, smash the like button if you watch this, and if you're a numbers guy, okay, smash the like button if you like numbers. The numbers show that there's over 300 million Arabs, Muslims over in the Middle East. Okay. And to the west of them, okay, they've taken over much of the East. To the west of them is this itty bitty country called Israel. And there's about 8 million people there. 8 million. And they are constantly on defense mode, trying to defend themselves against the radical Hamas terrorist organization. So the numbers don't lie. If they were the ones being eradicated, then there would be far less Arabs and Muslims. Okay, there's 300 million of them in comparison to the 8 million Jews. Good morning. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in. I so do appreciate it. We are going to be getting to Regan Deering. She's running for the 88th district. That's what it is, the state house. I saw her yesterday, and big shout out to the folks from the Lincoln series and the Hesed House. I was out there yesterday emceeing an event and got to talk with a lot of the graduates from our program. It's this Lincoln series program. It's almost a year-long program where these women, it's women in conservative Republican politics, they learn the ins and out of becoming a candidate, possibly themselves, or helping candidates and campaigning. So it was really neat to listen to Mary Miller. She talked about our border. She talked about our economy. She talked about the green weenie policies and how they're destroying America. So we are going to be chatting with Regan here on the other side of this break. But we will also get to Joe Biden because he attempted to give a speech, is at least what I'm going to call it. It's an attempt at a speech. And he almost fell down again. So he falls down quite a bit. There is no greater foe to Joe Biden than gravity. So we're going to talk about that. Plus, a little bit later in the show, I do want to talk about the Washington Post getting fact checked. This is a story. The Washington Post gets fact checked into oblivion over this girl that got kicked out of a sorority house. And when I say girl, I say girl. She's actually a biological male who gets boners. I'll be back. Good morning. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in. If you're watching, go ahead and smash that like button. Jacqueline, she's commenting this morning. So the families of these deceased people are okay with leaving them to rot. It is a statement of leftism. Wow, the mental infection of these people is astounding. So Jacqueline here is talking about a story we did in the 6 o'clock hour where these green weenies, they have this policy. It's a small Colorado town, and there was this awful putrid smell coming from these bags. For several days, there were these neighbors next to the funeral home. This funeral home is called Return to Nature, and it's in Penrose, Colorado. Now, there have been a couple of funeral homes. Actually, there was one in Illinois, and I'd have to check into it to see if they were doing green burials. But there's supposed to be a protocol in place where if the bodies are not buried within 24 hours, you have to properly refrigerate them, and that's not what is happening. Green burials are totally allowed. I'm not even so much against them if they're done correctly and if you're properly handling our dead, right? Because we have to have respect for the dead, much like we have respect for life in the womb. You have to have respect for dead. It's amazing how progressives and leftists have zero respect for life at all stages. Okay, but the gruesome discovery revealed that this funeral home in Penrose, Colorado, they were performing these green burials without embalming chemicals or metal caskets. So if you were to do a green burial correctly, sometimes there's like decomposing materials that you can put a body in and then it decomposes. It's like a capsule. And then you also embalm the body so that way it doesn't like decay so fast. It's for preservation. If you can't get the body into the ground within 24 hours. Okay. So sometimes that just can't happen. We've had people die in our lives. We understand that sometimes it's impossible to get somebody in the ground in 24 hours. Okay. So you have to properly refrigerate, embalm, and preserve the body until the services can commence. The Associated Press, they have a state document alleging that the funeral home owner tried to conceal the improper storage of these corpses. So he alleges that he was doing taxidermy. So he's doing some shady, creepy, disturbing stuff, and he was improperly storing these bodies. And then he tried to hide the fact that he was improperly storing these bodies. The county sheriff said at a news conference at the scene that it was horrific. The scene inside the building was horrific. Could only imagine it was 115 bodies. Ugh, I would hate to be a cop. But so far, no one's been charged in this investigation. But at the very least, you would think that mishandling a corpse would be a crime in the state of Colorado. But I don't know if anybody's going to be held accountable for this atrocity. Really, that's what it is. 115 bodies. So Mary Simmons, she hired. So to get to Jacqueline's comment here, she actually hired Return to Nature Funeral Home. Okay, this Mary woman, and she wanted to do a cremation of her husband, but the ashes never arrived. Suddenly, I was like, "Oh my God, I've lost him all over again." This is a quote from Mary Simmons, who hired the funeral home. Through tears, and you can watch this. This is just tragic. She says it's like the grieving process is starting all over again. So this was a really sketchy building. The company was reached out to by the Associated Press. No one picked up the phone, and there was no working voicemail in this sketchy building. But yes, a sour, rotten smell still seeping from the back of the building where the windows are also broken. So this is just odd. And these people give them money to bury their dead and to bury them correctly. But everything green these days, it's not green, it's brown because it's shit. I can say that on the stream. It's just true. Coincidentally, these alternatives make everything smell awful. Okay, so yeah, the green policies are stinky. Okay. Um, Nobody uses deodorant. You stop using showers. You take fewer showers in the name of this cultist type religion where humanity will cease to exist if we dare do otherwise, if we take a couple of showers a day, or if we take more than one shower a week, um, then we're anti-human. That's what this cult tries to say. So green policies are terrible. We should be talking with Regan here in just a little bit, but we're going to get to a couple of other stories. We've got so much to get to this morning. Yes, Ilhan Omar, she shares this out. It's a 2013 photograph, okay? And she tries to say that, hey, these are 614 Palestinian children who were murdered by Israeli forces. And she tries to, you know, throw this out there, and it's misinformation. The photo she shared was not child genocide in Palestine, where 614 Palestinian children were dead by Israeli forces. This was a photo from 2013. It's from Syria after an alleged Assad attack on civilians. This had zero to do with Israel or the Palestinians. and ILHAN Omar, a sitting congresswoman, shared it out anyway. This is an image she said was from Gaza. It's actually from 2013, and it's of child victims of the Assad regime's Eastern Ghouta gas attack. So they gassed a bunch of kids. Sad, tragic, but it's from 2013. A sitting Congress. I have no words, absolutely no words. Good morning. This is the Morning Buzz. The American Israel Public Affairs Committee called out both Hamas caucus members, AOC, and Ilhan Omar. So this is actually interesting. The American Israel Public Affairs Committee, their official Twitter account said, quote, "You mean like AOC? Like this AOC?" And they show, Ilhan Omar's tweet where she's spreading dangerous disinformation and misinformation, blaming Israel for killing kids who were killed in Assad in Syria 10 years ago. Once again, the squad doesn't let the facts get in the way of their anti-Israel narrative. Okay, so they are anti-Israel. They're going to stick with that narrative. And AOC, she was the one who came out and said, hey, be careful of these images that are shared out there that provoke an emotional response. Be careful. And like this image, this is an image that promotes an emotional response. And a sitting congresswoman shares this out. Democrats Hamas chairwoman Rashida Tlaib has not addressed the controversy over her vice chair spreading dangerous misinformation. So she is the chair of the Hamas caucus, Rashida Tlaib. Her vice chair is Ilhan Omar. She might still be running away from reporters. She has not responded to Ilhan Omar's tweet. Take a listen to this clip where Rashida Tlaib refuses to condemn the Hamas terrorists who were chopping off the heads of babies. Okay, so let's take a listen to Rashida Tlaib running away, and this is what it sounded like. She just refuses to condemn the Hamas terrorist attacks. Here we go.
Terrorists have cut off babies' heads and burned children alive. Do you support Israel's rights to defend themselves against this brutality?
We're just going to go through there.
You can't comment about Hamas terrorists chopping off babies' heads?
So she's just running away.
Do you have a comment on Hamas terrorists chopping off babies' heads?
And she refuses to condemn the Hamas terrorist attacks and the chopping off of babies' heads. And joining me here is somebody who has come out against the Hamas terrorists. So Regan Deering, a conservative candidate for the state representative in the 88th district, calls for an immediate investigation into all state funds given to Black Lives Matter groups in wake of the Chicago Black Lives Matter chapter posting this pro-terrorism graphic. It was this paratrooper, and they parachuted in to this music festival. It was like a rave, and then they just started slaughtering people, cutting people down. Joining me, Regan Deering. It's so great to see you again. I saw you yesterday at the Hesed House. How you doing this morning, Regan? Oh, having a hard time hearing you. Let's see. Oh, here we go.
Morning, Kat.
Hey,
Thanks
good
for having
morning.
me this morning. Yes, just a few short hours ago, we were together. You did a wonderful job emceeing the Lincoln Series graduation, so thank you for being there.
Oh, yeah, no, and it was incredible. I mean, these women, you should have seen the way that they ran up to Regan. They were like running up to Regan after they gave their speech, these graduates. It was really incredible to see your energy, the energy that you bring. And I'm really excited to see a conservative woman get into the race here, the 88th district. So I saw this press release and I had to just say, we got to get Regan on to talk about this. This is huge, especially I want to get your reaction to the ISP now coming out. I don't know if you saw that press release yet, but the press release is the Illinois State Police. They're saying, hey, be on the lookout, be vigilant, be aware. There could be an increase in hate crime or violent attacks. So your thoughts about Black Lives Chicago, Black Lives Matter Chicago, and state funding going to Black Lives Matter?
Well, thank you for noting my press release. Absolutely, you're right. There needs to be much more public attention on the terror that Hamas is creating over in Israel. And when we have a local organization here in our state of Illinois that is celebrating those savage attacks, and then we find that our state budget is in fact giving hundreds of thousands of dollars to them, I just called it for an immediate investigation into those funds. We have, citizens right here in Illinois, my hometown of Decatur, that could certainly use grant dollars for funding, for food, for housing. And I just think it's despicable that we are having, no regard for where those dollars are going. So my call for an investigation and a revocation of those dollars is something that I think our leaders in Springfield need to start doing, is calling out these organizations for what they are and really taking a deep dive.
Yeah, well, and I think that it's come out before that the state has actually given money to BLM organizations, and these are radical organizations. And I compare Hamas really to BLM, and it's really not all that different when you look at it. You remember the autonomous zones that they've created in other cities. Wouldn't be shocked to find out if there was some sort of autonomous zone. I mean, it is an autonomous zone, Chicago, right? It's a totally different thing up there in Chicago. They've created a place where it's just complete anarchy. But it's come out before that the state of Illinois has given money to organizations like BLM.
Well, I think it was this spring or maybe earlier this summer. I think it was Jeannie Ives that brought attention to the grant dollars. They have, an executive director that's non-existent, maybe even potentially has a criminal record. The storefront where their office is listed is vacant, and they hadn't reported on how they spent their previous grant dollars. So we need a lot more transparency. We need a lot of accountability, and especially when we're giving money to organizations that are celebrating terrorists around the world.
I do remember that story. So it was the $50.4 billion. It was a state budget bill, and 300,000 of that was given to Black Lives Matter Lake County. Now, this was led by, you alluded to, this felon. He's a convicted felon. His name is Clyde McLemore, and he was a prominent figure in the Chicago area with ties to Black Lives Matter. The co-founder, Patrice. This was a felony bail jumping guy. And he had a charge in Wisconsin prior to a charge where he was kicking down a door and threatening police officers during the Kenosha riots. So he's been charged with all kinds of, cop hating, battery. He's got all kinds of felony convictions, and he's jumped bail before. So $300,000 of that, of our money, of your money, taxpayer money, going to BLM organizations. So, Regan, another thing I wanted to talk about was this ISP press release. They're talking about, hey, we're reminding the public of the importance of remaining vigilant against hate crime activity. Now, what I'm kind of concerned about here is the ISP also sympathizing with the Hamas terrorist organization, because here they say they're going to continue to reach out to Muslim and Jewish communities in Illinois to communicate and support religious leaders being impacted by the current threat environment. So they're I don't know if that's kind of, subtly indicating that, hey, we're going, it could also be the Hamas people or the so-called Palestinians who are treated poorly throughout all of this in the state of Illinois.
Well, I think that this public statement is a direct correlation to the wide open border that we have. Leadership in Washington, D.C., Republicans and Democrats alike should recognize that we are having, in fact, an invasion and start to secure the border. Just yesterday, I think that it came out that we have a fourth Iranian, unusual suspect that has been caught down in Texas. There are plenty of peaceful Muslims living here in the United States and in Illinois, and I call on them to rise up and talk about the strength in their communities and condemning Hamas. But I think it's a sad fact that our state police are now having to put out these warnings, but we do need to be vigilant. We don't know who's coming across our border and into our communities. Chicago is facing a migrant crisis. We're having 20 plus buses of migrants coming to our city. And now the governor is finally reacting and saying, we can't afford this. We can't sustain this. And, I think that then Illinoisans do need to start calling attention to our leaders who are putting us in these terrible positions.
Mm. Yeah, well, and that's one thing Mary Miller actually yesterday was talking about at the Hesed House where I got to see Reagan a little bit. And she was talking about the open borders and sharing with us that we've got what's going on in Israel and with the Hamas terrorist attacks. Who knows who's coming in through that southern border and will be weaponized against the Jewish community because that is their goal, right? I mean, I think, and I wasn't around during 9/11, right? I was 2 years old, but I saw videos of these Palestinians at the time after the Twin Towers they fell. Uh, these Palestinians were shouting "Death to America," and they were celebrating the falling of those towers. And I don't know, it's worrisome. So wearing our head on a swivel, right? Being vigilant. I mean, it's kind of scary that we've got the ISP coming out and saying, "Hey, be careful."
I think that we're seeing all around the country and in news articles and live videos that we have, radicalized folks here in the United States that are in fact celebrating Hamas every day. And it needs to be called out. It needs to be drawn attention to, and that, we don't need people in America that are not pro-America. We're an
Yeah.
amazing country. We want people here that want to be here, that want to work, that want to, become part of the American greatness. And so there are already people here who are potentially a threat to our American citizens. And so I do encourage everyone else, like you said, to be vigilant, to pay attention, see something, say something. We do need to come together as a community and as a state, and we need to demand our leaders do better.
Yeah. Well, and one more thing that I wanted to talk with you about pertaining to the immigration issue. I think that there's this really weird housing thing going on in McLean County, and this is going to be in your district when you win the 88th, right? McLean County, we have a really huge housing crisis, so-called crisis. But what's happening is a lot of these multifamily homes are popping up. And there's not really a demand, an increased demand. As you know, we have this mass exodus coming or going out of Illinois. People are not moving to the state of Illinois. Now, McLean County has kind of weathered a lot of that. We haven't lost a whole lot of it. We were one of the only counties to not lose population within the last couple of years. Now, we have remained the same. There's not this huge demand of people coming and moving to McLean County. But yet all of these multifamily housing units are going up, these huge complexes. I'm just kind of curious your thoughts about that, or possibly even Lincoln College. Now, there has been talks of, Lincoln College being converted into some sort of immigrant facility. I wouldn't be shocked if that comes out. I haven't heard anything more of that, but one of these types, LaShawn Ford's office, I tried to reach out to him. He's a state representative, and his office never got back to me. I was curious, he's a Democrat, right? It's impossible to get to their offices. It's kind of incredible, and I've done that before where you call Republican legislators and they'll pick up the phone. When you call Democrat legislators, like it's like usually one of their office people will try to get back to you. But Reagan, your
Well,
thoughts about where are we going to put them? You think that we're going to put them in these housing units, the colleges, where?
Well, I have heard J.B. Pritzker say that he is going to call upon smaller towns, cities, and villages throughout the state to take the overflow of migrants that Chicago cannot sustain. And, I think it's going to be important that our local county boards, our local municipalities are truthful and say, we can take them, we can't take them. I mean, to your point, in McLean County, if you're not having a need for those housing units, they may be there potentially for that use. I mean, here in Decatur, we have a housing crisis for our own citizens of Decatur, and we have waiting lists for Section 8 housing. We have 400 applicants for 10 spots. And so there is a need for us to be having affordable and safe housing for our own community members. But it will be interesting to watch, but we can't just wait. We need to be proactive. We need to call upon our elected officials. I applaud you for reaching out to the office of our congressmen and women, because they do need to listen to us. They do need to hear our concerns. And if our communities are not prepared to take on a number of migrants, then we have to be confident in saying no.
Yeah, well, one thing too, I wanted to get your reaction on Joliet. I believe the mayor there actually shut down. There was this weird thing that JB did where he was giving money to these municipalities
Of course, it
without
always
even
comes with
telling.
money.
Yeah, but without even telling them, Regan. I was just like, wait, so how do you give money to people who don't even want it for that purpose? So the Joliet mayor, he said, you know what, JB, I don't want your money. I don't want the grant money for these illegal immigrants. We don't need it for that purpose, and I don't want them here. So he wanted to withdraw this grant, calling it unsustainable. And he says we cannot do what the grant says. And I found out in the news like everybody else did. I had no knowledge that this grant was applied for. So via the Joliet Township, they went underneath the the Joliet leaders,
Leadership.
or yeah, they went under his nose, and I was just like, wow. So it
Well,
would.
elections have consequences, and we do need to pay attention to our elected officials at every level. To your comment there, someone had to apply for that grant money. And,
Mhm.
I do think that those who think money and power are just going to be, acceptable reason to force situations upon our local municipalities need to be called out. We do have the power of the people. We need more people rising up. We need more people saying that this isn't sustainable, that this isn't what our community signed up for. Chicago can be a sanctuary city, but McLean County doesn't need to become the next Cook County.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, and that's the thing too. You said elections have consequences. So if this Joliet mayor, he sounds like a great guy, right? He's like saying, "Oh yeah, no, I didn't want the money. I didn't want the grant money." But he didn't even know that they actually applied for it via the township. So they went under his nose. And a vigilant, somebody who's vigilant, somebody who, really cares, they will find that stuff and they'll put an end to it before it even happens. So Regan, I truly do believe that you are going to be one of those legislators who remains vigilant and finds that stuff before it's pushed through. But Regan, we've got to take a break. Before we go, anything else you'd like to add?
Well, I just want to thank you for having me on. Your listeners know that we are in McLean County and all throughout the 88th District door knocking. So hopefully we will show up at one of your doors and get the opportunity to visit with you and talk about how I can best represent them in Springfield.
Wonderful.
We've got a
Well, thank
website, www.reganforillinois.com.
ReganForIllinois.com. That's the 88th. It includes parts of McLean County. Regan, always a pleasure. And thanks so much for coming on. And I appreciate you standing with Israel and condemning the Hamas attacks. I know I didn't realize that that was something that needed to be said, but I'm glad that Regan is saying it because a lot of our state legislators aren't. LaShawn Ford, one of them I named here, he has come out and has said that, the Palestinians, they're occupied, they're oppressed. Not true. Regan, you have a great rest of your day. And folks, we'll be back on the other side. This is the Morning Buzz. You can see me live, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. I'm there. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. That's Kat Peterson 929. Join me on the other side. We're talking a little bit about the Washington Post getting fact checked. You're gonna like this story next. Good morning. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in. I so do appreciate it. If you're watching, go ahead and smash the like button. Man, this guy, his arch nemesis is, foreign policy, the economy, but uh, I think there is no greater foe, more wicked to Joe Biden than gravity. Okay, so foreign policy, not a friend, it is his arch nemesis. The economy is arch nemesis. You name it, he's losing the battle. But the biggest foe is gravity. Armed with stairs, gravity has one goal in mind, and that is to embarrass the pudding head president at every public appearance he is at. So, um, not that gravity really needs stairs because you guys remember when he fell without the stairs. Apparently, he tripped on some sort of sandbag. I've got that clip here that we're going to play on the stream. I'm not going to play these on air because they wouldn't make sense on air because you can just see him falling, right? Now, you can kind of hear a thunk in this one. I might actually play this one. This is pretty funny. Uh, but he fell again, and it wasn't with, like, these big stairs, Air Force One or anything like that. It was, like, little tiny stairs that he couldn't get up, and he fell up the stairs of these little tiny stairs. So it happened in Philadelphia as Biden was set to take the stage, for a speech about it really doesn't matter. I don't know what he was giving a speech about, but he was giving a speech, and these were little tiny short steps, not unlike the size of the bus that Joe Biden needs to be driven into all of his campaign events. So multiple angles of this latest derp performance. He's falling 81 million votes. Really, folks. Uh, eh, eh, 81 million? You expect me to believe that? And you're like, okay, Kat, why is this newsworthy? Well, we'll get to that here in just a little bit. Soon and very soon, we're going to talk about Vivek Ramaswamy, the Harvard students. There were a bunch of student groups and student organizations that co-signed this anti-Israel letter. And, it's kind of odd that Vivek Ramaswamy is taking the side of Hamas terrorists in this. I truly believe that he's taking the side of these Hamas terrorist organizations and these student groups who co-signed this anti-Israel letter. So he goes on Twitter and he says it's not productive for companies to blacklist these kids because now these companies are looking for the kids who actually signed on to this anti-Israel letter, and they're saying, well, I'm a CEO of this company and I don't want to hire the kid that is an anti-Semite. I just don't want to deal with that. And the companies are blacklisting these kids for being members of these student organizations that make these terrible political statements. I mean, these pro-Hamas terrorist political statements. Okay. So Vivek is actually taking the side of the students who co signed the letter that was anti-Israel. So he says, quote, but it's not productive for companies to blacklist students for being members of these student groups that make dumb political statements on campus. So he's ripping on the companies for saying, hey, we might not hire these people in the future. If you signed this letter, and if you're a part of this student organization, then I'm not going to hire you as a CEO, or my company isn't going to hire you because our values really don't align. So then Vivek goes on in his tweet. He says colleges are spaces for students to experiment with ideas. This is not an idea. Okay. Vivek, I'm sorry, but this is not just some boneheaded wrong idea that these students have. This is them showing support for a for a terrorist organization. And there's right and there's wrong. And, just like I say that a man is a man and a woman is a woman, that's a biological fact. 2 + 2 = 4. These are things that I will unapologetically say are true. Israel is being attacked by animals, and they are being slaughtered by animals. And I don't care which way you look at it or try to explain it. That is the truth. And he's calling this a boneheaded idea, or that this is the wrong idea that some of these anti-Israel students and the student organizations who signed on to this anti-Israel letter that this is the wrong idea. Then he goes, I've been as vocal as anyone in criticizing left-wing cancel culture, but it's bad no matter who practices it. It wasn't great when people were wearing Trump hats and they were fired from work. It wasn't great when college graduates couldn't get hired unless they signed on to this oppressive DEI pledge, this diversity, equity, and inclusion pledge. And it's not great now if companies refuse to hire kids who were part of these student groups that once adopted the wrong view on Israel. This is an illegal point, it's a cultural point, and I say this as someone who is who vehemently disagrees with those Harvard student groups. So Harvard student groups, organizations, they co-signed this letter together. It's an anti-Israel letter. Look, Vivek, this is not the same thing as people wearing Trump hats. This is not the same thing as students not getting hired unless they sign these oppressive DEI pledges. Okay, this is, and we're talking about people who are beheading Jewish people. Okay, beheading Jewish people. And I mean, it's not a good look for you to take the side of those Harvard student groups, even though you say you disagree with these Harvard students. Uh, I do you really? Because it seems like you're anti-CEO, and the CEO should have a right in saying, just like they look at your social media, right? If these students, these Harvard students, are signing very publicly this anti-Israel letter, then I think that the CEOs should have access to that information and decide if they want somebody who is anti-Israel in their company and working for them. If your values don't align with me, and if you are pro chopping the heads off babies, I probably don't want you working for me. They have the right to do that as a CEO. And he goes on in his tweet, he says, calling for the blacklisting of students right now are responding from a place of understandable hurt, but I'm confident that in the fullness of time, they will agree with me on the wisdom of avoiding these cancel culture tactics. This is not a cancel culture tactic. This is CEOs making smart decisions about who they want working for them. Okay, this isn't cancel culture. They're proactively trying to find people who are not pro baby killing and pro chopping off the heads of innocent Israeli children. So we are going to get to that in just a little bit. 115 bodies found at this Colorado Green funeral home. I've been talking about that this morning. I think that there was actually a funeral home here in the state of Illinois that also was looked at by police for not properly refrigerating these bodies or getting these bodies decomposed in the right way or burying these bodies. So the police actually investigated this small town, Colorado. It's in Colorado. It's Penrose is the town. And it was a putrid dead animal smell. And then they went and they investigated. It was 115 or so bodies found in this green funeral home. So what they were doing were these green burials, but they weren't properly refrigerating the bodies. You're supposed to refrigerate them if you can't bury them within 24 hours. So we're going to get to that here in just a little bit. But first, I do want to talk about Joe Biden because there is no greater foe. There is no foe more wicked to Joe Biden than gravity, folks, because Joe Biden's arch nemesis. Now, he has a lot of arch nemesis. Nemesis. Foreign policy, the economy, you name it. He loses every single battle. He loses the battle. But gravity, especially armed with stairs, gravity has one goal in mind, and that is to embarrass our pudding head president at every public appearance. It happened again. It doesn't necessarily need to happen with stairs. Gravity doesn't need stairs for Joe Biden to fall. Gravity just kind of works and gets Joe Biden to embarrass himself publicly without the help of stairs. We saw that when he tripped over this imaginary sandbag. Remember when I forget where he was, but he was on stage and they tried to say that, oh, he tripped on a sandbag. There was nothing there. The guy tripped in just randomness, right? He just fell over his 2 feet. But it happened again in Philadelphia over the weekend. He was set to take the stage for a speech about, I don't know, it really doesn't matter. Because all that we remember from the speech is Joe Biden falling. These were really short steps that he was going up to take the stage, very, very small steps. They weren't like the Air Force One steps, but they were short. not unlike the size of the bus that Biden needs to drive to all of his campaign events. But we've got multiple angles of this. You've got Joe Biden, falling 81 million votes. That's just what keeps playing in my head. When I see this guy up there and he just warbles on up there, stumbles up there, I'm thinking to myself, 81 million votes? Really? You guys expect me to believe that? So you're probably wondering to yourself, Kat, why is this newsworthy? Why do you keep talking about Joe Biden falling? I think that it's newsworthy because, one, it serves as a reminder for Americans struggling to buy groceries that this man is responsible and that this man is older than dirt. Okay, we here at Cities 92.9, I really enjoy some cheap content, and I love when Joe Biden forgets to go left, or if he forgets to go right, and he's like, I don't know where to go, or the Easter Bunny has to usher him to where he has to go next. I love that stuff. It's cheap content, and here's another reason why it's newsworthy, because the White House actually put out protocols in place. They have protocols in place to stop Joe Biden from falling down, and they're still not working. Those protocols are not working. Protocols that we know about because somebody actually leaked them to corporate media, and they thought it would be helpful, okay, to leak these protocols out. Now, either that or the White House has a mole, and this mole is working for Gavin Newsom. That's why they leaked out these protocols about how to keep Joe Biden falling. But for some odd reason, this was leaked to corporate media. And I'm just going to quote from the White House here. They say, some senior Democrats privately have been frustrated with Biden's advance team for months, noting that the president often appears not to know which direction to go after he speaks at the podium. Often without context, Republicans have used video clips of Joe Biden looking confused about where to go after his speeches to raise further questions about his age. So to prevent Republicans from seizing on Joe Biden falling apart before our very eyes, the following protocols have been put in place, okay? So they've got these actual protocols, and it was leaked to corporate media. Biden has been doing exercises to improve his balance with his physical therapist. They aren't working. So that was leaked. That was one protocol that they're working on. Joe Biden is working on his balance with his physical therapist. Number 2, there's a protocol. He switched to tennis shoes to avoid slipping. Not sure if they have Velcro or laces, but I to avoid any kind of stumbling or fumbling, I would imagine that these tennis shoes have Velcro on them. I'm sure Jill doesn't want to be bothered with Joe Biden asking her to tie his shoes for him in the morning. So likely the tennis shoes have Velcro on them, but I'm not too sure. And then the third protocol, Joey's doctor has recommended balance exercises. And these balance exercises are like maintenance maneuvers. That's what they're calling them. They're maintenance maneuvers. Judging from these videos, Biden has not been using these maintenance maneuvers or these different balance exercises because he keeps falling. It may be time, folks. It may be time for to put Kamala Harris in. I know you're like, what? But if I were a Democrat, having the ability to claim any criticism of my candidate was either sexist racism or racist sexism would be a heck of a lot it would be a heck of a lot easier to just say, oh yeah, Kamala Harris, she sucks because, well, actually it's racist to say she sucks, and actually it's sexist to say she sucks. That would be so much easier than having to pretend this 80-year-old bag of rotting oatmeal can remain upright, is full of vigor. Okay, right? So it'd be so much easier to just chalk it all up to, oh, she sucks because of racism. Oh, she sucks. You can't say she sucks because that's racist. You can't say she sucks because it's sexist. It'd be so much easier to do that. If I were a Democrat, I'd just want her in because it's hard to try to convince people that this guy is just full of vigor when you can't even get him to stand upright. We, the people, are in need of a better president. We're just in need of a better president. I've got to take a quick break, but when we come back, WAPO getting fact-checked into oblivion. Boom! Fact-checked into oblivion. So there was this girl, she got kicked out of the sorority house. And when I say girl, I don't actually mean girl. It was a biological male who got boners in front of these sorority girls. And this guy got kicked out of the sorority. And now he's like suing, I guess, the sorority. And then the sorority members are suing the actual chapter itself because they forced these girls to be around this guy who would get boners through his leggings, which is just weird. I'll be back. WAPO getting fact checked into oblivion over this story next. Good morning, folks. Hey, if you're watching, go ahead and smash the like button. We are going to be back talking a little bit about this woman, I don't know, who is suing a sorority. Let's get into it. Here we go. A little bit later in the 8 o'clock hour, we'll be visiting with Jerry Vogler from the McLean County VA for Veterans Corner. Very excited about that. But first, I did want to talk about this Washington Post getting fact checked. So, community notes on X. So, it's like this little banner that comes at the bottom of tweets. And I mean, they remain undefeated, these community notes on X. I like these a lot. And well, Elon Musk runs the second most pro free speech platform. I would say third most pro free speech platform. Truth Social, number one. Rumble, number two. And number three, I would say, is X, formerly known as Twitter. Uh, I really do like X. But the community notes, I like these. uh, it's only a matter of time before this new CEO, her name is Linda, she's a total rabid leftist. She starts to claim that the community notes is not what sponsors want. So I'm going to enjoy these community notes while I have them. They're like fact checks. So the community note here fact checks the Washington Post on this article about a 21-year-old University of Wyoming student who was looking for community, but instead she faced death threats, a federal lawsuit, in an attempt to kick her out of a sorority. She's a very manly looking woman. Wait, it's 2023. This is a man. So, yeah, we're going to be talking about this story. The WAPO tries to paint this guy as the victim here, but really he's not. So, there was a federal lawsuit against him. He was also, said he was told that he has to leave the sorority, and I'll tell you why this guy was going through all of these attacks, as the Washington Post would call them, next. Good morning. Hey, this is the Morning Buzz. I so do appreciate it. Like I said, this 21-year-old University of Wyoming student was looking for community, as the Washington Post says, but instead she faced all kinds of death threats, a federal lawsuit, and an attempt to kick her out of the sorority. Look, this guy is not a good guy, and there's a reason why he's facing a federal lawsuit and being kicked out of this sorority. So, it sounds like a sad story, sure. As the Washington Post, they headlined it as this 21-year-old who is looking for community but is now facing death threats, a federal lawsuit, and they attempted to kick her out. She's a very manly looking woman. Um, that's because this girl's name is Artemis Langford and is actually a man. The community notes adds this context. Number two, this guy is a biological man, so they refer to this student as a female throughout the article. uh, Fact is, it's not a female. This is a man, a biological man. The lawsuit was filed by 6 University of Wyoming women, actual women, who sued Artemis Langford, this trans woman, and Kappa Kappa Gamma sorority over Langford's admission to the house. So they are suing the chapter because they're sick and tired of men infiltrating women's spaces, a sorority. So they admitted this guy into the sorority house, and they cited allegations that Artemis had been, quote, peeping on them in a sexual way. So this guy was peeping on them while living in the house in a sexual way. Earlier this year, members of the Kappa Kappa Gamma sorority filed a lawsuit against the Wyoming chapter after after Kappas allowed Artemis, this trans man, to shatter the glass ceiling, as they say, and help Kappa become the first sorority in Wyoming history to allow a transgender student into their ranks. Okay, so that's what Kappa did. The Kappa sorority women, the women who are actually in the sorority, were upset by that, um, rightfully so, because this man was not being brave and beautiful. In fact, he was peeping on them. So there was all kinds of things. Not all sisters who were born that way found their decision to be beautiful and brave. Um, among the girls' complaints here. So this was not a beautiful and brave decision by Artemis Langford or by Kappa Kappa to allow Artemis Langford into the sorority. These sisters did not, the actual women did not like this. One sorority member, she actually walked down the hall after taking a shower and she was wearing a towel, right? She lives there, it's her house. She felt unsettled by his a presence, and she turned around and she saw Artemis watching her silently, this man. Artemis has, while watching members enter the house, had a visible erection through his leggings. Okay, so multiple complaints against this guy, and the Washington Post is trying to paint him as the victim when really he is not the victim. We are going to get to this story, Artemis Langford. So this is a trans man or trans woman. He's actually a man. He pretends he uh, fakes it. He says that he's a woman. He was allowed into this sorority, and the sorority women are really suing the guy and the chapter for allowing this guy to be in the sorority house because they are citing allegations that this guy had been peeping on them. I've got that story on the other side. This is the Morning Buzz on Cities 92.9. I'm so excited to chat a little bit about that. And then we've also got the Veterans Corner coming up at 8 o'clock with Jerry Vogler. Before we get into that story, I did want to touch on this. The voters in Michigan, they overwhelmingly are opposed to the state contributing taxpayer funds to these battery plants in Michigan. So there is this Goshen battery plant. It's CCP. It is the CCP. It's a CCP company in their own bylaws. Goshen says that their whole purpose is to serve the Communist Chinese Party. So the voters in Michigan, the people who live there, 72% of them said, no, we do not want taxpayer money going towards this CCP company. There is a company that mirrors this, or that the same company wants to build one in Manteno, Illinois. I've got more on this next. This is Cities 92.9. Good morning. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in. I so do appreciate it. If you're watching, go ahead and smash the like button. Yes, the Goshen Project is proposed for Manteno, Illinois. It's identical to the Goshen Project in Michigan. I'd be curious what a poll would look like here in the state of Illinois. I'd imagine that it'd look a lot like the Michigan one, where we have Michigan voters saying that they do not want taxpayer dollars going towards this project. This is 72% of them saying we don't want taxpayer dollars going towards this Goshen battery plant in Michigan. 11% saying yes, we do want taxpayer dollars to go towards this project. Now it's identical, the one that is coming to the state of Illinois. And state and local politicians, look, I don't think that they're really listening to what the Biden administration is saying publicly. So publicly, the Biden administration has come out and they've said that they are against the Chinese taking advantage, and really so in 2022, the Biden administration has said that they are reversing an open door policy that has prevailed for several decades preceding that administration. So during the Obama era, so they are trying to get rid of China's technological and developments that have come up here. So really, I think it's state and local politicians who are living in the past. And Joe Biden says publicly that he does not like these policies where China is allowed to spy on Americans, where they rob us and they build their technology and they expand here in the United States. We're going to get to that here in just a little bit. You're listening to The Morning Buzz. So most recently, the Washington Post, they got fact checked. And I really do like the community notes that X gives us. So I don't know how long we're going to, it's only a matter of time, really. The CEO, her name is Linda Yasarnia or whatever. She's a rabid leftist, and likely she's going to do away with the community notes because that's what our sponsors would want. But I'm going to enjoy the community notes while we have it. So the Washington Post actually got fact checked on the story. They attempted to create content about a 21-year-old university student, University of Wyoming, a student who was looking for community, but instead she faced death threats in a federal lawsuit, and they attempted to kick her out of the sorority. She's a very manly looking woman. So yes, they got fact checked, the Washington Post. This 21-year-old was looking for community. Instead, she faced this federal lawsuit and the attempt to kick her out. But what the Washington Post failed to mention, and what the community notes add context, they add this context to it. And I think you're going to find it interesting, the added context. Number one, this 21-year-old student, this girl, her name is Artemis Langford, and she's not a girl, she's a biological male. This is a man. And this lawsuit was actually filed by 6 University of Wyoming women, actual women, who sued Langford and Kappa Kappa Gamma, the sorority, over Langford's admission to the house, citing allegations that Artemis, this trans woman, this man, had been peeping on them in a sexual way. So, earlier this year, and I've talked about this story before, and it's interesting now that we've got the Washington Post pretty much, making this guy into a victim when really he's not the victim here. Uh, Earlier this year, members of Kappa Kappa Gamma, the sorority, they filed this lawsuit against this Wyoming chapter of the Kappas. So they filed, like these 6 women filed a lawsuit against the sorority chapter that allowed the sorority chapter allowed Artemis Langford to shatter the glass ceiling and help Kappa become the first sorority in Wyoming history to allow a transgender student into the ranks. So the girls complained about Artemis several times before filing this lawsuit. So one sorority member, she said that she would walk out and she, would shower, and she had the towel around her in her house because this guy was allowed to live amidst women in this sorority house. And she'd walk out of the shower wearing a towel because, it's her house. And she felt an unsettling presence. And when she looked over her shoulder, there he was, the guy watching her silently. She turned around, she saw him. Also, the girls made mention that this guy, while wearing leggings in the sorority house, had a visible erection through those leggings. Artemis repeatedly was questioned or he repeatedly questioned women in the sorority house that lived there, what their body parts looked like, what their breast sizes were, like what their breast cup was, what kind of bras they wore, and whether the women were considering breast reductions, which is just odd. Okay. So imagine living with somebody, if you're a woman, right? Imagine living with somebody, or men, imagine your little girl living with a man who is constantly berating them with questions about the sizes of their breasts. It probably makes you uncomfortable. Yes. One time, Artemis was asked to leave the sorority slumber party, but wouldn't, and said he'd leave after the girls fell asleep. Odd. These complaints were dismissed in August when a Wyoming judge would not define what a woman is, or at least what it used to be. So these girls, of course, were brushed over. But once again, I would like to thank the community notes on Twitter, because this, of course, saved us from clicking on it and, driving traffic to the Washington Post. This is an article they created content pretty much making this Artemis guy into a hero when clearly he's not. Okay, he's disturbed individual that was allowed to live amidst women. I do want to get to some other stories here on the Morning Buzz, Cities 92.9. But first, every Monday morning at about 8 o'clock, we have Jerry Vogler come on and we talk all things veterans in and around the McLean County area. Jerry, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing great, Kat. Hope you are too.
Yeah, I'm doing wonderful. Well, let's get started. What do you got for us?
Well, there's a few things that are happening that are going to have a long-term effect. One thing about the VA, especially concerning their website, they have a website called va.gov, which has everything from soup to nuts in it, is massive, but it's very difficult to manipulate through it because unless you know the exact nomenclature of what you're looking for or the form associated with it, it doesn't react that well. However, they're cleaning that up, and they're beginning to add other apps to it that currently you have to access outside the va.gov application. The big one for the veterans is My Healthy Vet, which is a website that provides information and tips and tools on helping veterans partner with their healthcare provider. So together they work to manage the veterans' health a little bit better. Currently, there are a number of apps that are out there like that, but because they were developed over decades of time, as those programs were put into effect, they had a tendency to be totally separated. They had their own passwords and usernames and all that stuff. This transition, which will take about 2 years, will move My Healthy Vet, e-benefits, and some of the other apps into the va.gov portal, and you'll only have to sign in with one username and one password, and then you can click on the things that you want. So it should be much easier, especially for us old timers that didn't grow up with computers and websites and browsers and all that sort of thing. So it's going to be a great improvement for easier access.
Wow, that's awesome, man. I'm so glad that that's going to provide easier access. Again, that's My Health Vet, Health E Vet. It's like the health and then the letter E Vet. That's going to be great for veterans. Now, I do have a question that I'm going to ask you. It comes from somebody who served in the Army. He goes, I served in the Army, and I had several buddies with whom I have not kept in touch now that I'm older and have kids, and the kids have grown up, and I have the time. I would like to reestablish contact with my buddies. I have no idea how to accomplish this mission. How do I reconnect with buddies that I have not stayed in touch with over the years? Now, Jerry, is he talking about, buddies that he met in the military? Is there some sort of way he can connect with them?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because the first thought would be that you would go to the VA. However, unless that there are specific purposes for needing contact, the VA will not reconnect you with anybody in their system, except if you are looking for a person that has VA claim for service-connected disability, that type of thing. They will pass information on. In other words, you can send the VA a letter saying, hey, I'm trying to reach this person. Do you have any information on how to contact? It will forward that letter on to the veteran that you're looking for if they're in the system. That way, the veteran can make a choice as, do I want to reconnect or not? Which I think is really great. However, there are a number of other ways that you go in. The major veterans organizations like American Legion, VFW, AMVETS, DAV, they all put out monthly magazines, and usually in the back there's a reconnect type of page that lists all the different military units from the past that are setting up with reunions and get-togethers, and there's an in search of section where if you're looking for a particular person, you can put that person's name in there, and if that person happens to belong to that same organization, then they can go ahead and make the contact back. The big thing is there's only one branch that does a really good job of making it easier to make reconnection with your buddies, and that is the United States Navy. Every time the United States Navy went out from port on a ship, there was a cruise book. The cruise book had a picture of every single person on the ship and what their job was, usually at their duty station. Years later, those cruise books are still available. And for most of the ships, if you just put the ship's name in Wikipedia, it will call up all the information about the ship. And it will have a list of people who have contacted that website to provide information. And they will have email addresses and telephone numbers and so forth, the years they served in their name. Unfortunately, the other service branches have not done that. And And of course, there's another way to go about doing that. And believe it or not, Facebook is one of the things that a lot of people on Facebook, including veterans. And if you go into Facebook, you can usually find them online in one of the social medias like Facebook or Twitter or whatever. Then you can get a hold of them. If you just put in your browser something like military, off-duty, how to find your old buddies website, it'll pop up a whole different ways of getting a hold of them. But it is something that a lot of veterans do in about that 45 to 55 age group where life has settled down and they've got the time to spend on it.
Right. And one thing, too, before we get to the quote of the day, which is one of my favorite parts of Veterans Corner, you can go to the VFW post 454. So I don't know if you saw this, but I participate as a costume judge every year, and it's a great time. And, the VFWs around it's great to see folks that have served, and then they gather together at these VFWs. But there's actually going to be a Halloween party and a costume contest. It's going to be Saturday, October 28th, folks, at 7:30 p.m. That's when it starts. The AKA band will actually be playing some classic music. So come on out for some music and prizes. Everyone's invited. First place prize, you get $100 cash. Second place, you get $75 and $50 for third place. So dress up, prizes if you win. The VFW post 454, they're great friends. And, that's one way to kind of get out, go to events like this, get to meet new people and meet people who have served maybe Facebook and all of these great things that you were talking about, Jerry. Now, Jerry, what's the quote of the day today? I'm excited about this one.
Well, especially over the last 3 or 4 years, there has been an absolute exponential increase by some to try to silence opinions that are incompatible with the opinions of certain ideologues, activists, social media, and others. Canceling people, doxing people's personal information on social media, canceling college campus speeches have become fairly commonplace. Accusations about the possible political weaponizing of government institutions like the FBI, CIA, Justice Department, IRS, and others, if those are true, they are very frightening abuses of power, and they threaten the freedoms which our Constitution is supposed to guarantee for all of us. And the quote of the day kind of addresses that very quickly and very briefly, and it is basically this: if freedom of speech is taken away, then dumb and silent we may be led like sheep to the slaughter. And that quote comes from George Washington.
I love the quote. And Jerry, that's going to do it for us. We're out of time, but thanks so much for joining me here on Veterans Corner. That's Monday morning starting at 8 o'clock with Jerry Vogler. So do appreciate it. And Jerry, you have a great rest of your day.
You too, Kat.
All right, folks, we're going to be back on the other side. I'm going to be addressing some of your comments, concerns. Also, I do want to get back to this story. You won't believe it. This Green Funeral Home. And yes, there was this one story. It was the Hines Funeral Home. This daughter says that she got the wrong ashes from the Illinois Funeral Home, and that's all under investigation. So there's something going on here with funeral homes, and I don't know what exactly it is. I know in the case of Colorado, this was a green funeral home, and they were improperly storing these bodies, and they weren't refrigerating them. So there was 115 bodies that they found, and it was a terrible scene. There was a putrid smell. I'll get to that next. Hey, folks, if you're watching, go ahead and smash the like button. Yes, we are going to be back on the other side with the green weenies. They suck. 115 bodies found at this Colorado green funeral home. And, it shouldn't surprise you. Progressive leftists, they don't love life. They hate life, actually. And they are all for, disrespecting the dead. They disrespect life in the womb. It shouldn't shock us that this is something that happened as a result of these green policies. So more than 100 bodies were found at this green funeral home. It was in Penrose. after the neighbors reported this putrid smell. And it's a small little town in Colorado, and there was this smell coming from the back door, mainly because the windows were busted out of the building, the facility. But you take a closer look at this funeral home and what caused the smell, it was because this green funeral home, they were not storing the bodies correctly. So decaying bodies found improperly stored. They were in trash bags. So sad. It's called Return to Nature Funeral Home in Penrose, and they perform what's called green burials, and that's with the embalming chemicals or the metal caskets. And the neighbors there, they just kind of assumed that there was dead animals inside of the building, and they called the police. And it turns out that this was a horrific scene. In fact, that's what the sheriff said. He told the press that in a news conference that this was a horrific scene. So the Associated Press said that there was a document out there that alleged the funeral home owner, his name is John, tried to conceal the improper storage of these corpses. So he was caught red-handed that he was storing these bodies wrong. And he was alleging that he was doing taxidermy. I still don't understand how taxidermy is justification for improperly storing these bodies. But anyway, so far nobody's been charged in the investigation, which is wrong. And actually, this daughter out of Carlinville said that she didn't get her ashes. So the Illinois funeral home is under investigation after accusations it provided the wrong ashes to dozens, if not hundreds, of families. Failing systems. This is what this is. It's all just failing systems. So the Sangamon County coroner said the investigation into Hines Funeral Home in this Carlinville, that's what it's called, includes alleged cases of misidentified remains tracing back to the early 2020 and spanning across multiple central Illinois counties. So there's so much going on here. This one daughter, she said that she received the wrong ashes. So the wrong ashes. So there's something odd happening with the whole funeral homes not properly disposing of bodies. And it's just this disrespect for life that you start to see in progressive policies and with progressive temperament. Their ideology is just to disrespect life at every stage. It doesn't matter from womb all the way to death, right? They disrespect life just in general. This is why they're pro criminal. This is why they're pro baby killing, pro abortion. So this case, it's just so odd. And it's almost like Jeffrey Dahmer type stuff. So there was actually this widow out of Colorado, this one daughter out of, Illinois. I mean, their statements here kind of echo each other's, where they're talking about how they're reliving this grief. It's like the grieving process is starting all over again, is what this one widow said through tears. And she goes, suddenly I'm reliving this and I've lost him all over again. And I mean, this is just tragic, just so wrong. So we're going to talk a little bit about this. Plus, Ilhan Omar, she's getting ripped on for her misinformation. She actually spread some misinformation on X as part of her vendetta against Jewish people and Israel, despite the warnings of AOC. So AOC actually got out on X on Twitter. And she said, look, if you see a photo or a video that triggers this strong emotional response, then take a moment, pause, and check for, it to be verified by multiple sources. Okay. So AOC said that. So this woman is also a member of the Hamas caucus. That's what I'm calling these people: Ilhan Omar, AOC, Rashida Tlaib, Cori Bush. I mean, these people are just awful, awful people. And AOC, she tweeted this out, but I'd be curious if she's going to roast Ilhan Omar for her disinformation, because Ilhan Omar, she tweeted out a photo and it's from 2013, and she claims that this photo is a photo of Palestinian children who were murdered by Israeli forces. We know that that's not true. So I'm going to be chatting a little bit about that. If you're watching, go ahead and smash that like button. Smash the like button. Share this out with your friends. That would greatly help me out. We're going to get to Ilhan Omar and this photo. So the image itself is from 2013. and it's from Syria. It has nothing to do, absolutely nothing to do with the Israeli forces and Palestinian children. Nothing to do. It's from 2013. Actually, it was an attack from Assad, the Assad regime, and it was this Eastern Ghouta gas. They gassed children in this attack, and it was tragic, right? It's from 2013. And ILHAN Omar shares it out as if it's happening today and as if those were Palestinian children and as if the Israeli forces did that. That's just not true. Go ahead, smash that like button if you're watching. We're going to get into the funeral home here in just a second. So if you allow leftist ideology to just flourish, you start to see things just crumble. I mean, take a look at Chicago, take a look at the pro-criminal policies. We've got a funeral home in Carlinville, Illinois. This is a small little town. It's an Illinois funeral home, and it's currently under investigation after accusations that they provided the wrong ashes to dozens, if not hundreds, of families. So the Sangamon County coroner said the investigation into the Hines Funeral Home includes alleged cases of misidentified remains tracing back to early 2020 and spanning across multiple central Illinois counties. So this is just an example of failing systems. Progressive policies at the heart of all of them. They just don't care about life. And, with everything going on in Israel and Hamas attacking Israel, we know that they celebrate death. Okay, progressive policies, this weird, this leftist ideology, it's against life. That's really what it is. It's against life. And we're starting to see funeral homes across the country not even get the right ashes to families. If they're cremating these bodies, they're misidentifying these bodies. They're not properly storing these bodies. So this woman, her name's Rebecca, and she lives in Illinois. She received the wrong ashes and decided to drive to the funeral home to pick up the ashes of her father, who died in the summer after battling leukemia. Rebecca said her father was handy and dependable and always there for her. And while driving back from the funeral home, her tire blew out on the road. And she goes, "This is the first time something had happened that I would normally just call my dad and say, 'Dad, come help me.'" And this is just so sad that she got the wrong ashes. So Rebecca's family called officials last week to confirm whether those ashes were in fact her dad's, and they found out that they were not her dad's. So, she has the ashes in a necklace, and that's how she copes. But now she's being reopened up with all of these emotional wounds, and we're seeing the same thing in Colorado. So in Colorado, this was a green funeral home. I don't believe that the Hines Funeral Home is a green funeral home, but at the end of the day, it's all about failing systems. Okay. Everything that progressives touch, it just turns to crap. It just does. It's just bad all the way around because at the core of their ideology and at the core of their fundamentals, it's about death, and they celebrate death and they don't like life. And they love chaos, okay? And they love when the systems fail because they're all about that. And this is the case here in these funeral homes. Now we're starting to see it in our very own our funeral homes. So in this Colorado one, we saw the not properly storing them and refrigerating them. Now this is due to like green. This is a green funeral home where they don't use embalming, they don't use chemicals, they don't use metal caskets. This is called Return to Nature Funeral Home, and it's in Penrose, Colorado, and it's a small little town. Green burials, they are legal in the state, but if you do not bury somebody within 24 hours, you have to properly refrigerate them. That's according to Colorado law. In most laws, you have to properly refrigerate them. Now, the state of Colorado, they have a document out there, and it alleges that the funeral home owner in Colorado improperly stored these corpses, and then he concealed the fact that he improperly stored these corpses. So he said that he was doing taxidermy, and that's why he was improperly storing them. I don't know. It's this creepy, disturbing, very Jeffrey Dahmer-esque. But the county sheriff arrived to the scene there in Colorado, and he goes, "This is horrific." And so far, no one's been charged in this investigation. Same thing with the funeral home in Illinois here. Nobody's been charged with anything. I feel like, this has got to be. Uh, I mean, this funeral home is under investigation. Somebody's got to be charged with something. This is just not right. You can't give somebody else's ashes to somebody and have them wear that around their neck. And I mean, now you've got people reliving their grieving process and starting it all over again. So just tragic. Now, there was this sour, rotten smell coming from the back of the building in Colorado. And the neighbors were calling. There was this one woman, it's Colorado's very hilly, and she was overlooking the funeral home, and then it was wafting up to her balcony. Leftists, they need to make everything green these days. Okay. And coincidentally, these alternatives always make everything smell awful. For example, leftists won't wear deodorant and they take fewer showers in the name of, you know, green weenie uh, religion that all of these alternatives coincidentally, they lead to everything smelling awful. Leftist policies suck. Okay, green weenie policies suck. Even if you've got people in charge of, I don't know if this Heinz funeral home is a green funeral home, but either way, I've told you about failing systems. So what happened in Maui, the wildfires? Okay, that was a result of failing systems. When you put leftists in charge of things, things fail. The the train derailment in East Palestine, Ohio, just failing systems that train should have never derailed. Okay, the fire should have never happened, and it's because there's a total disregard of life and how precious it is. Uh, and at the core, progressive ideology just doesn't care. They just don't care about anything or anyone but themselves. They're living for themselves, and they don't care about humanity. So, like I said, these greenies, they have this cultist religion, and they claim that humanity will cease to exist. And if we don't get the electric vehicle, if we don't bury our dead at one of these green funeral homes, if we don't compost, if we don't recycle, right, then we are just terrible, terrible people, and we hate humanity, and humanity will cease to exist. And I love it. In the Bible, it does tell us that this earth will end. The only thing that remains true and will remain forever is the word of God, and God Himself, right? And our faith in Jesus is going to be the only thing that remains forever. But anyway, so time and time again, we see that these people do not have a respect for human life. So why would we expect such an anti-human group of people to care and respect for our dead? Okay, progressive lawmakers, when they talk about Green New Deal policies, what they really mean is Green Bad Deal. It always turns out bad. I do have to take a quick break, but like I said, I do want to talk about ILHAN Omar, this alleged American congresswoman. I don't think that she's an American congresswoman. She's a part of this Democrat Hamas caucus group. Okay, she's the Hamas caucus, and she's the vice chair of it. ILHAN Omar. Rashida Tlaib is the chair. She was caught spreading all of this misinformation on X, despite the warnings of social media influencer and bartender AOC. Now, she's spreading misinformation on X as a part of her vendetta against the Jews in Israel. She's very anti-Israel, very anti-Jew. Ilhan Omar spreading misinformation. Well, what kind of misinformation did she spread, Kat, and why is it so dangerous? We'll answer that on the other side. You can see me live in studio. That's YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. I'll be back. Hey, if you're watching, go ahead and smash the like button. Chad, I always appreciate you watching, my friend. And Darren, it's great to see you this morning. Taxidermy sounds like an old NCIS episode, right? I know the stuff happening in Colorado is like, whoa, what? This is like, and here we are. We're living out these episodes, this NCIS episode that you're talking about. And I think that this is, and stick with me here, I think that I'm kind of crazy. I think that Hollywood actually creates films that condition us to think that this kind of stuff is normal. You know what I mean? Like it's almost like they are conditioning us with these TV shows to think that this kind of stuff is normal. And I've always said that about the FBI, right? The weaponization of the FBI and how terrible the DOJ is and how they're equipping themselves against, Trump supporters. I've always said that the FBI is terrible, and they've weaponized themselves against American people. But Hollywood, what they tend to do is they create these movies and TV films. I mean, think about it. I mean, I could probably name 20 of them, different TV shows that paint FBI agents and CIA agents as like these great heroes, right? And they're always the heroes in the films. And I don't know, for some odd reason, I feel like Hollywood tries to condition us to believe that these things are totally normal. Before the 2020 pandemic, I mean, there have been movies that have come out about uh biological weapon, bio warfare. So yeah, Darren, I think that this does sound like a weird NCIS episode, and I don't think that that's by accident. I think that Hollywood does condition us to try to believe or try to think that these things are actually normal. So yes, all of our systems are failing. The funeral homes, you just name any kind of institution, it's failing because these progressives at their core, they don't care about life. They are anti-human, and as a result, a lot of this stuff is going to fail humans because they're anti-human. So we're going to be back in just a little bit. You're listening to the Morning Buzz. Good morning. Hey, this is the Morning Buzz. Thanks so much for tuning in. I so do appreciate it. And I'm so excited because guess who's in studio? Kev Ferris was actually in studio earlier this morning at about 6 a.m.
Yeah,
And now I've got David Paul Blumenshine in studio.
Kev is in an undisclosed place of the building right now, taking his LSAT exam. He aspires to be a lawyer. A lawyer.
A lawyer. Yeah. All right. It's the same, isn't it? I don't trust lawyers or politicians. I don't trust them.
Obviously, most of our legislators, I shouldn't say most of them, but a good portion of our legislators are lawyers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well,
There's a
that's,
reason for that.
yeah. And if you take a look at the relationships Michael Madigan had with his attorneys, right? They're like henchmen, is what I call them.
Yeah.
They're like henchmen.
Not to take anything away from the good attorneys out there. Unfortunately, the law profession tends to lean towards the progressive wing of life. And yeah.
Well, David, I'm excited for you to be in studio, and I'm excited for Kev to take his LSAT. I hope he does well.
Yeah.
You guys can text in at 309-451-9299, and you can also subscribe to the David Paul Blumenshine Show. It's real easy. Just go to YouTube, type it in, the DPB Show, and you can listen to him live on Sundays from 1 to 3. And then right after him, back to back, it's Kev Ferris with Speechless from 3 to 5. So
dynamic duo.
Yes.
And Kev's even in studio with me during my show. He helps me with the board over there that scares the wits out of me. But, you never want to be doing your show and then suddenly have a Bongino pause where you can't excuse it away. Actually, with Bongino, he has somebody operating his board. So it's really not that they're off air. They're on air, but you got to check it. We were just talking about that, Kat.
Yeah, we were. We were talking about Dan Bongino and his pauses, and then I'm like, "Oh, is he off air?" No, he just pauses.
Well, I know when you came back to our audience, and we obviously can't do it without the people that listen and chat and join us on all the different platforms that we're involved with now. Partly because of Paul Garcia and Kev Ferris, they got us launched into the world of Twitter, Rumble, YouTube, and Facebook. You were going to talk about ILHAN OMAR.
ILHAN OMAR.
ILHAN OMAR.
ILHAN OMAR. She is the vice chair of the Hamas caucus. That's what we're calling these people. They're part of the Hamas caucus. You won't believe it, David. Okay, so AOC, I want to preface this. AOC, she comes out on Twitter a few days before ILHAN posts her photo. Okay, so AOC, she says this on Twitter. She says, if you see a claim, a photo or a video that triggers a strong emotional reaction, take a moment and pause and check multiple sources for confirmation that that's true. Okay, so obviously AOC is pro-Palestine, Palestinians. She's pro-Hamas, terrorist organization. And we're seeing all of the horrific images of literally children's heads being chopped off.
Yeah.
Okay, so and she's warning people. She's like, oh, yeah, that might not be true, and there's this, oh, that's not true. The Hamas is not chopping off children's heads. That is true. It is true. And there's this faction of people who are sitting members in our U.S. Congress who are trying to spin it to say that Hamas isn't actually doing that.
Well, Kat, we have known that people or subhumans, I'm going to call them subhumans, that's savagery. This has been going on for years and 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 years. Child sacrifice, the mutilation of people. I mean, we're not talking about anything new, ILHAN. This has been going on. It's the human condition. Unfortunately, there are people who are so evil, and I believe the terrorist groups like Hamas and others like them are savages. There's not rehabilitation.
Well, and it's amazing because you'll hear this rhetoric that they say, colonialism is bad and colonizing people is bad, 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 bad. Right. And there's been this push, against Christopher Columbus, who actually came and colonized and got rid of the, I'm going to gut people like a fish and hold their heart up to the sky and pray for rain. Okay. So Chris Columbus, he got rid of all of that stuff. And, it's amazing.
Well, at least he impacted it to turn towards a different direction.
Yes. And I'm not saying everything that the colonizers
Yeah.
did was good.
No,
I'm not
the
saying that.
human conditions and human problems. I mean, when you talk about savagery, it was a way that we treated one another. Hence the reason, the way that the settlers, those who came, the pilgrims who came to this country were treated. That's why they fled the lands they were in, because they believed in something different, especially the pilgrims, right? They believed. It didn't mean that they were without their shortfallings or their sin. They were. I mean, it's just as prevalent today as it has been for years and years and years and years and years.
Yeah.
It hasn't gone away.
Well, and then here's the thing. Well, Israel isn't
I don't
even
do videos. Yours truly, I haven't even watched the George Floyd video.
Really?
No, I don't do it, Kat. I don't need to feed something into my mind. And whether it's horror movies, whether it's over sexualization of people, I just don't go out and seek out that information for my brain. Your brain is such a powerful, powerful thing. And it's the memory base within your brain. You constantly catalog all of the images. Can you believe that? Isn't that fascinating? Everything we see with the human eye, that's why it's amazing. The miracle of sight is just beyond our abilities to realize what has to take place, 1,000 things for us to actually see one another.
Yeah.
And so putting something inside of our brain, our little catalog memories of all these images, it starts to kind of do what ILHAN OMAR says, is what is true and what isn't.
Yeah.
And she so she has a point there, because there are things that we have seen that might not necessarily be true. And unfortunately, when it comes to this, most of what we're hearing, there probably is a great deal of truth to it. And that's the sadness.
Well, and one thing that isn't true, and we've got to take a break, is what ILHAN OMAR actually tweeted out. It's an image of all of these children. They're lined up and they're dead, right? And she said that they were Palestinian children dead at the hands of the Israeli forces. Turns out the image is from 2013, and it has nothing to do with Palestinians or Israelis at all. So,
like the Obama cages.
Yeah. Well, and we're going to come back and we're going to chat a little bit about that with David Paul Blumenshine on the other side. It's a Monday morning, 8:49 a.m. here. I think it's going to be pretty sunny outside. I think we're looking at a high of 57 degrees.
That's misinformation, Kat. That's all this is misinformation. It's cloudy out right now.
It's cloudy. I hope that it starts to get I know. Well, right now I'm looking at it. It says 46 degrees, partly sunny. I'm looking outside. It says
There's not a sun in the sky.
Not one sun.
The sun will come out
sunbeam
tomorrow or later today.
Yeah, I hope that it comes out later today. All right, we're going to be back on the other side. This is the Morning Buzz. Good morning, folks. Thanks so much for joining me. I so appreciate it here on the Morning Buzz. Joining me on the other side of this board and microphone.
Is that camera on?
Yes.
Oh, hello. Good morning.
Is that camera on? Oh, hello. Good morning.
I can see you. Can you see me?
Yes. So,
or according to Ben Matthews, we see you.
We see you.
We see you. We
Ben
see you, Ben.
Ben
Matthews. Are you tuned in this morning?
I couldn't believe. I mean, it's just the lack of self-awareness. I don't know. I just can't believe. I mean, nobody's been charged with them. I can't get on that right now. I do want to ask about
ILHAN. We were on ILHAN.
Haiti.
Yeah.
So you have been in Haiti.
Oh yeah.
And I think that we can point to Haiti as one of these examples. You know how I've talked about the decolonization.
Oh yeah.
So there was some sort of revolution with the Haitians.
The Toussaint. Yeah. That's who's on their dollar bill. He was the revolutionary king / presidente, el presidente, but not el presidente, because the French and the Spanish. That's the division between the Dominican and Haiti. The Dominican, a fairly wealthy country in comparison to Haiti. Spaniards on one side of the island, French colonies, mostly African slaves. Most of them were slaves. They were involved in the production of sugarcane and booze. I mean, they're rum.
Yeah.
There's a reason that island existed. It was a lot of rum production and alcohol production. But anyhow, go ahead. Toussaint.
I'm not saying that
who also kept, as a black man, kept his people in chains. They still had slaves.
Yes. So here's why I bring that up. I think that we can point to Haiti as one of these countries where it's almost like I don't know, like a petri dish. I look at it and look what happened there. The decolonization, what they tried to do, and I'm not saying that they weren't treated poorly, right? The Haitians were treated terribly and, enslaved, and that's atrocity as well. However, they rose up and they had this revolutionary, the guy who's on their dollar bill or whatever. I don't even know all of that, but I know the basic gist of this history where they worked to decolonize.
Yes.
And now Haiti is one of the worst. I mean, you can't even fathom how terrible it is over there.
It's unfortunately, you don't get the death counts, how many people are killed at any given time on a weekend. I mean, it would be with about the same population. Well, that's not true. The population of Haiti, believe it or not, for a very small island, is expansive. They have such corruption. I mean, it's so corrupted. I was going to make a comparison between it and Chicago. I mean, it's Chicago on steroids. You don't even know who to trust over there. But the Haitian people are very proud people. They understand what's going on. I mean, they have enough technology. Most of them carry a cell phone around with them. They might not have enough food and health or health care, but they do have cell phones, and they have battery charging stations. So they're very aware, and they're on Facebook. I have friends from Haiti still on Facebook. Yeah, it's sad.
Well, and I think we can look to that, what is going on. And if you visit these Palestinian territories, they are Chicago on steroids as well. It's like just there is no functioning that's going on. It's all run by the Hamas terrorist organizations. I mean, get beaten, you get genital mutilation, right? If you're gay, this is just barbaric practices. And when you decolonize in such an aggressive way, I guess, and that's what the Palestinians, I mean, aren't really even doing, because they invaded Israel, so they are technically the colonizers. We want to talk about it, but Israelis, they have this way of life that I think is almost and they envy it. The Palestinians envy the Israeli way of life, and they have worked to try to decolonize or take over Israel. And it only leads to more depravity, more depression, more just terribleness. Because if you look at the Palestinian territories and then you look at Haiti, they did the same thing. So if Israel were to be eliminated like the Palestinians want, I would imagine it'd be something close to Haiti. Israel would become the next Haiti. I don't know. I just think that there's been examples of this. And I just wanted your take on it because I know you've been there.
Well, and yes. So whether it's Palestine or whether it's Haiti, any other area of the country, I was going to not go down a rabbit hole here, but I looked at an article the other day. I think Levin had it up on his site, and I can't find it right now, but actually Palestine, where did they come from? It's not in the Bible. as the Bible defines that area, we know that was the 12 tribes. It had nothing to do with Palestine. Haiti,
Isaac,
where did
Ishmael.
well, even if Ishmael, yeah, well, the entire 12 tribes, but where did Palestine come from? The derivative of the word Haiti, Haitian. That wasn't the name of that island. That island was one island before the Dominican. So it's the root of how those areas were formed. And it was the first movement away from scripture. And it's throughout the world.
Hold on, folks. Good morning. Hey, this is the Morning Buzz. Darren, I love it. He goes, partly sunny, but it looks like there might be some rain headed in. So my forecast, I've got my forecast up here. I've got a few things I keep up for show prep and for, to bring you the news of the day. And I've got the weather forecast up here, and it says on my little thing, partly cloudy or partly sunny. It just changed, David, to mostly cloudy. So now it's mostly cloudy.
Because it is mostly cloudy.
So it's almost like the weather gods or, the weatherman
went outside.
Yeah. They were like, oh, Kat Peterson just said that it was partly sunny.
They're listening to the Morning Buzz.
Yeah. So now, no, it is mostly cloudy. I hope that the sun comes out soon. But David Paul Blumenshine.
I hope the sun comes out tomorrow. The sun will come out tomorrow.
Sun will come out tomorrow. Well, that's going to do it for us today. I know we're all the way at the end of our show. We talked about a lot. ILHAN Omar tweeting out this misinformation. It was an image from 2013. And really what the image was, it was from Syria. And it was an alleged Assad attack on civilians. This had zero to do with Israel or Palestinians. And she tried to say that it was Gaza. It was an image from Gaza today of Palestinian children. And that's just a lie. And she's a sitting congresswoman.
I'm sure the Zucker suckers will be on top of that with their fact check, and they're bringing down that ILHAN's page.
I don't think so.
Zucker sucker.
All right. You guys have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye. I love you. We'll do it again tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. to 9.